Uh, make sure we got a couple of things working before I really kick this off. Okay, we rocking and rolling. We are rocking and rolling. We are rocking and rolling. Welcome. Chicago Bears Weekly Season 5, Episode 6. This is a live stream special edition. This is going to be the state of where the Chicago Bears are post NFL draft. Now, I went live in last episode recapping the entire draft class, and that was my basis of that episode, was just to cover the entire draft class, not to go too much deeper into the outlook of the season, where things can go. We're heading into the offseason training and the offseason workouts, and we're starting to get things kicking in a year one of the post-Matt Nagy, post-Ryan Pace era with Matt Eberflus, I keep getting the names, Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles, respectively, as GM and head coach. Now, we completed our very first NFL draft with the new regime, and I've gave it a B-, a B. They did a solid job. And we're just going to spend this episode talking about a couple of things that I want to touch on as the state of where the Bears are right now and where the Bears are going to be heading into training camp in July. So we got a couple of months away from training camp. And as we get the comments rolling in, Elijah Finnegan, thanks for tuning in. It says, I'm optimistic about where the Bears are going. I agree with you on there. I will touch on that a little bit later. Nothing like a license, definitely. But first thing I want to talk about is the state of where the Bears are right now. Now, we're post-draft. We're already post-draft. We got some pieces on defense. And a lot of people said it was strange to hire a defensive head coach, but I one that agrees that a defensive head coach could be better for a quarterback. Well, not better. I'm to choose my words wisely. A defensive head coach can also help just as well as an offensive head coach, because we've seen with guys like Josh Allen and the way that Justin Herbert is developing, you can have a defensive head coach and you can still develop an elite quarterback as long as you have a solidified, good offensive system with good offensive pieces, which the Bears aren't necessarily there yet. Because at this point now, where the state of the Bears are now, they don't want to say it. Ryan Poles doesn't want to say it. But the Chicago Bears, as we stand right now, let's just be honest, it's in a rebuild. It's basically in a rebuild. If you want to call it a retooling, you can. But the state of where the Bears are now, it's in a rebuild. And you've got rid of guys like Khalil Mack. You've traded off him. You've gotten rid of guys like Danny Trevathan. You got rid of Tariq Cohen. Akeem Hicks still isn't back, and we're not sure if they're even looking to bring him back. Allen Robinson is no longer here. Jimmy Graham is off the roster. You got James Daniels, who left to go to the Raiders. Bilal Nichols is no longer with the Bears. So the Bears, out of the 90-man roster, and I saw this tweet earlier today, out of the 90-man incoming in training camp roster, 53 of those players are brand new to the Chicago Bears roster. So whether Ryan Poles, he wants to say it or not, the Bears are in I'm not going to say a complete rebuild, but they are in a rebuild. The good thing is with this Bears team, they have the quarterback of their future. They have the quarterback that they believe that is going to be the future of this franchise. And that is key when you're in a rebuild. Get the quarterback and start to get the other pieces around them. because at the end of the day, that quarterback contract is eventually going to come up in the next maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years, if Justin Fields turns out to be the guy that they drafted him to be last season. So I think you're in a window of opportunity now as the Bears have to capitalize on having Justin Fields in a rookie contract. We've seen a lot of contracts outside of the league, Patrick Mahomes, guys like Aaron Rodgers. You've seen some of those bigger contracts start to hinder the way the teams are getting built because you have so much money built into that one quarterback that you don't have enough money to build the rest of this roster. Let's get to this comment. For Nation, thank you for tuning in. I think this year the Bears are going to stink, but we'll get better next year. I think we are going to suck because of what Pace and Nagy did last year for the team. Now, for that, I can honestly say I agree. I'm not going to say the Bears are going to total out tank or just total all stink, but I don't see the Bears winning more than I'm not going to get to the prediction, but I'm not going to see them totally stinking just yet. But I will not say tanking. They might not be very good. I'll just say this. It might just be almost a repeat of last year, if you want to be honest. I think the Bears roster now is not dramatically improved over last year. Maybe outside of the offensive line, maybe. But I think it's going to be the similar type of season, so don't expect the Bears to do anything dramatic. Don't expect the Bears to do anything great. I just want to see growth. Elijah Finnegan says, yeah, we shouldn't expect anything big this season, but we should see growth. While 1,000,000% agree with you on that one, that is the main thing I am looking for this Bears heading into this year is the growth. Now, one point I wanted to touch on is, of course, is the transition away from Matt Nagy. The Bears offensively, under Matt Nagy, were terrible, especially in the passing game. They were terrible. They had stretches in 2020, and 2021 had some good stretches as well where they ran the football very well. But the scheme of Matt Nagy and the play calling of both him and Bill Lazor, they were not able to, one, I'm not going to say the play calling and the design of the offense, they were not able to put Justin Fields in the right positions to succeed. And at that point, it all started with the Cleveland Browns game last year, as in the transition from being Justin Fields and Dalton. It didn't look like much of the play calling really changed. And I've said the same thing about Matt Nagy when it came to Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles in 2020. It didn't seem like much of the play calling changed or much of the design of the offense changed. We have two different quarterbacks that have two different skill sets. Now, let me get to this comment right quick. Shout out to my guy, Scoop. My hope for the season is 7-10, but Justin Fields takes a step forward in progression, and some of our young players start to show real talent. I could agree with that 1,000,000%. I don't expect the Bears to be too great this year, but as long as the growth is there, that's fine. You got some younger talent, you got some of your bigger contracts, you got the window structured into 2023 free agency, which if the Bears see growth, then I'll start to see them spend more money and go after the big name free agents in the 2023 class versus this 2022 class. Because you had so much roster restructuring to do, the Bears really were kind of hand-struck by the Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace era. So they were kind of struck by that. Ford Nation says we had a bad passing offense, but yet our playbook was pass happy. Now that I 1,000,000% agree with. I've said that in 2020. I said that in 2019, to be honest. I said that in 2020. I definitely said that last year. Matt Nagy's playbook was extremely pass happy. It was extremely pass happy. And I hope we don't see that with Luke Getsy's new offense. And I hope we don't see that. So the transition away from Matt Nagy into Luke Getsy's offense. Now, we've seen Luke Getsy tied a hand with the Green Bay Packers offense last year and the last couple of seasons. He helped Devontae Adams develop into one of the better receivers. I think the best receiver in football, if you want to be honest. I think Devontae Adams is the best receiver in football. And coming in, Luke GETSY had a big hand in that offense. Now, Luke GETSY's offense, we're probably going to see what we wanted to see out of Matt Nagy the past couple of years with Trubisky, which is, number one, rolling him out of the pocket. It's interesting to see what the signings of this Bears offensive line is going to be, whether it's Lucas Patrick, Dozier, and you have two young tackles, and I don't know what they're going to do with Bourne, but you have Tevin Jenkins and Bourne. You still have Whitehair amongst your front. So from this Luke GETSY offense, I'm expecting to see more rollouts. I'm expecting to see more things that put Justin Fields in positions to succeed. And that is the key. We don't really necessarily try to breed the world, beating the world passing the football. Because at the end of the day, you have a bell cow running back in David Montgomery, and you have a solidified backup running back in Khalil Herbert who can carry the load for your offense. And you have Justin Fields' athletic ability. You have him being able to run the football. You have your QB1 that is so dynamic, not only just in the passing game, if he's progressed in that way. And this offseason, he changed his mechanics. I'll get to that later. But you have Justin Fields, who is so skilled. You have running backs in Montgomery and Khalil Herbert who can carry the load. You add elements of speed to your offense, whether it's Byron Pringle, and I'm still going to be interested to see what happens in that situation. You have Mooney, so you have some speed there. The Bears have some speed on their roster. You bring in David Moore, who's had some success with Russell Wilson. So hopefully I will see this offense transition into, I'm not going to say all run first, but element more of the running game and set up your play action and set up things that can have Justin Fields succeed versus just dropping him back behind a bad offensive line, having him sit in the pocket like a sitting duck. So I'm expecting Luke GETSY to come in, transition this Bears offense, and I think I will start to see better. Let me get to these comments. Elijah Finnegan says, hopefully our offense will grow, but our defense, I know, will be solid. I can agree. I will touch on the defense a little bit later, but I can agree with this comment. My boy Scoop, I don't believe that our skilled players are as bad as everyone tries to make them seem. Mooney will be a stud this year. I expect the Kmet to really show up this year. That is another thing I didn't touch on a couple of seconds ago. I didn't touch on the role of Cole Kmet. I've said mostly last season that the tight ends need to be involved more, especially when you have a young developing quarterback. You have a young tight end who can produce and get things done in Cole Kmet. The tight end needs to be the young quarterback's safety blanket or check down blanket or security blanket. Cole Kmet has the chance to be that with Justin Fields. And to see Cole Kmet not really be involved with this offense was a bit disappointing because I know Justin Fields didn't have the greatest of years, but he wasn't also put in positions to succeed. And the one point that he could have succeeded at is that having a tight end that could be a pure security blanket, and Cole Kmet, I believe, can really do so. He's in year 3 as a Bear. He's been through a lot of quarterbacks, but I just do believe if you involve Cole Kmet, you did sign Ryan Griffin and O'Shaughnessy as additional tight ends this offseason. So I do believe in this Bears offense. Get the tight end involved more. I think Luke GETSY will do that. They did that a lot with Green Bay with Robert Tonyan. And even Mercedes Lewis at his advanced age was still involved in that Green Bay Packer offense. And I expect a little bit of that with this Bears Luke GETSY offense. So getting the tight end involved is going to be key in having this offense be a success. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to be world beaters right away, but I do believe that you're going to see a lot of improvement from what we had in Matt Nagy. But transitioning over to the development of Justin Fields. The development of Justin Fields is going to be extremely key. It's going to be extremely key. Because Justin Fields is in year 2, he's already transitioned into his second offense, which you have Matt Nagy and Bill Lazor, and then you have Luke GETSY, who is the offensive man since we have defensive head coach Matt Eberflus. The development of Justin Fields this year, I think should be the absolute main, and I mean main focus of this Chicago Bears organization. Once they make the focus on Justin Fields' development, in the offseason, he tweaked his mechanics. He changed a bit of his mechanics, which that was a little bit of a question. As of me, myself, being an Ohio State fan and watching him throughout his years in college, mechanics wasn't always great with Justin Fields. Now, if he could shorten his release, because at some points you could tell the ball took a little bit long to get out of Justin Fields' hands. And in the league that you have in this league now, you have better defenders, you have quicker defenders, you have film study and all that. Getting the ball out quicker is going to make a huge difference. And him tweaking his mechanics to get the ball out quicker, speeding his progression, speeding his reads, and hitting his reads is going to be extremely key in his development. And then you also have to tie in the development of this offense under Luke GETSY, which I believe you're going to see more of the run pass option, which I think is going to be absolutely a big weapon with Justin Fields' athletic ability and his 4.4 speed. You're going to have a lot of different things that's developing with Justin Fields. You're going to have the play action set up, I believe, in the running game. And I think that is going to be key as well. Because at the end of the day, I believe that Fields, he has the potential to be great. As long as he's developed right, and I think he will be. I'm not going to put – this is not Matt Nagy, where I had no faith in him. And I'll have more faith in Luke GETSY and Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles that comes in the plan that they're not going to fail Justin Fields at all. Shout out to Chi-Town Hustler. Says when he mentioned his new mechanics, he made it seem like it worked and he trusts the staff. That is key. That is going to be key. I'm going to leave this comment up. That is going to be key in the development of Fields. It's him gaining the trust with Luke GETSY and Eberflus and the Chicago Bears offensive staff. That is going to be absolutely key. When you have that trust, I think that goes a long way. Because last year, I didn't see it. I didn't see any trust. Even with Foles in the start, I didn't see trust. Andy Dalton, I didn't see trust. I didn't think the quarterback and head coach, which was Nagy's relationship, did not have a lot of trust in it. And if you want to be honest, I didn't see that they trusted Matt Nagy's offense. They didn't trust the scheme, and which is why you had a failed passing game that was pretty much dead last in the league for majority of 2021. And you could say 2020 as well, that they were in the bottom half passing-wise. And you got to think of this Bears offense transitioning and helping Justin Fields in his development. And I think his development is going to be what actually happens in 2023. They see good development. They see good progress in them. They're going to have the faith to build the roster around them. And if they see that, I think 2023 is going to be more successful than 2022. Now, let me get back to these comments. Elijah Finnegan says, I have faith in our coaching staff. I do too. I'm not going to sit there and say I don't trust them just yet. It's still to wait and see. The preseason for the Bears, I believe, it means more, I think, in years past. I think the preseason is going to mean a little bit more because you get to see live game action with guys getting into a new system, both on offense and on defense, with guys getting those reps, necessary reps, to get accustomed to one another. And I just believe that you're going to see trust in this Bears coaching staff. I think you're going to see another different mentality, a physical mentality. You're going to see, I think guys are going to start to believe in them more than they believe in Matt Nagy, because at that point last year, I think Matt Nagy lost the team. And if you want to be honest, Matt Nagy lost the team last year at some point, and I think it was a little bit after the Cleveland Browns debacle. He really lost that team last year. It really looked like that to me, that he really lost the team. Shout out to my guy, Scoot. He says, give me 3 offensive linemen, and I mean top quality offensive linemen, and I'll be happy. I think you'll see that in 2023. To be honest, I think you'll see that in 2023 is where the Bears start to really beef up this line. Because at the end of the day, we still have, you got to think about it. You still have Larry Borom and you still have Tevin Jenkins that are in year 2. You're still going to develop. They're in develop mode, especially with Tevin Jenkins missing majority of the season with the back surgery and Larry Borom missing some time with injuries as well. So they really didn't get a chance to develop in this offense, which is why the Bears ended up having to sign Jason Peters last year because of the injuries up front. And you had, like I said, Jenkins with the back. You had Borom missing time. You still have Mustipher, which I don't know what they're going to do with him, with Lucas Patrick on the roster and with Dakota Dozier on the roster. So it's going to be interesting to see where this Bears team is going to be headed on the offensive line front. And Chi-Town Hustlers, shout out to you. Speaking on the point that where I think Matt Nagy lost the team, he lost the team the minute Fields wasn't named the starter. You know what? I would not disagree with that. I would not disagree with that. He could have lost the team when Justin Fields wasn't named the starter. Now, I was one to say, if Fields didn't play right away, I wasn't mad at it. I was not mad if Fields didn't play right away, which he didn't. But I was also one that said before last year that if the Fields plan was in place, Matt Nagy needed not to be the head coach. We seen what he did with Trubisky. We see what he did with Foles, and it didn't work then. And quarterback was never the issue. It was, and then it wasn't at the same time. So Elijah Finnegan says Fields is the real deal. I definitely agree with that. I've been a fan since Ohio State. So transitioning over to the defensive side of the ball for the Bears. The Bears are going to be back in a 4-3 scheme. We've seen the 3-4 probably since, I want to say, 2015-16 when Vic Fangio took over as defensive coordinator and the Bears got away from the cover 2 scheme that they've been running successfully under the Lovie Smith era. Now we're going back to sort of a 4-3. Now, it's been rumored that Roquan Smith is going to be playing a little bit of outside backer. They did bring in Morrow. They didn't bring in the kid from Indianapolis. I'm so bad with this name right now. They bring in Al-Qadim Muhammad. They bring in Justin Jones from the Chargers. You still have Robert Quinn in the fold. Travis Gibson is going to take more of a role. They did just draft Shaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon to help in the secondary to pair with Jaden Johnson. You have Eddie Jackson that I think this is the make or break year for him, especially with this defense and where the Bears are going to want to take this defense. It is going to be a make or break year for one Eddie Jackson because 2018, great. 2019, he slipped off, but he was still productive. But I think the last 2 years seen him struggle, whether it's been injuries. I remember he was on the COVID list at one point in 2020, and he just was not the same. He has not been the same player of the last 2 years. And the Bears did give him an extension after 2019 season. And I think this is the year 2 or 3 of that deal. I'm not necessarily sure where he's at on his contract, but I believe this is either year 2 or 3 of his contract extension. And Eddie Jackson does have potential to be one of the better safeties. But at the same point, I just believe this is a make-or-break year for Eddie Jackson. He struggled in pass pro. He was not a really good tackling. And you do get help with a guy like Brisker who can fly all over the football field. They've had him in the box in Penn State. They had him outside the box. They had him covering. So I believe he could have been a first-round talent as well, but he slipped to the second with the Bears. And I'm not mad at it, as well as Kyler Gordon, who's a hole that they really needed to fill, especially with Jalen Johnson developing into a really good, solid corner. You needed a guy opposite of him that can produce. And I believe he is that guy. He's definitely was a first-round talent that slipped, and it was a definite need for the Bears. So this 4-3 defense, I think you're going to see a little bit more aggression from this defense. You're going to see a little bit more aggression from this defense. And Chi-Town Hustler touching on the Eddie Jackson point, If Eddie doesn't show up, then he needs to go. Once Amos left, he dropped off, but he was forced to play strong safety, not really his fault. Now that I can agree with. He was more forced in the strong role because when he was in his free safety role, he was very instinctive. You could see him, they played more of the blitz. He was playing a little bit down in the box as well, which I think that was something that they got away from a little bit, is Eddie playing with his head and his instincts and using his closing speed. He was forced to play strong, which is definitely not Eddie Jackson's game. He's more of a free safety, a free-flowing safety, than he is a strong safety. And I believe Brisker is more fitted for that strong safety role, which will put Eddie back in his free safety's position. So I actually agree. If Eddie was not a strong safety, maybe his play would have been better. But I still do believe that is a make-or-break year for him. Yep, that was money. His instincts are 100. His instincts were very key in 2018 and 19. His instincts, you could see he was playing more on his instincts than thinking a lot. Now, with Chuck Pagano, I think he changed the way he called defense, especially in 2020. And you had a lot of bit of linebackers covering like receivers, which they got burnt a lot. I can remember vividly, I think it was week 17 in 2020 when they played Green Bay, and you had Danny Trevathan covering Marquez Valdez-Scantling, which was an absolute complete mismatch. It was an absolute complete mismatch from head to toe. You do not have the Bears. You cannot have linebackers covering receivers. So I think you're going to get away from that with a 4-3 defense. I think you're still going to have some aggression with Robert Quinn and Travis Gibson up front. You have Angelo Blackson. You have a guy like Tonga who's a very good run defender. And I think you're going to see a lot more aggression out of this Bears defense. Chi-Town Hustler says, I like what Brisker said, that he's old school. Who would you compare him to? Who could I compare Brisker to? I know I've seen a good amount of his games being that he was in the Big Ten. But I can maybe, if I'm going to say anybody closely, I could probably say the person that's starting to come to my mind is Jamal Adams. But I think Brisker is better in coverage. If I had to pick anybody, it could be a little bit of Jamal Adams as far as his physicality, as far as his instincts, as far as his ability to tackle. But if I could compare him to anybody that's in this league right now, based off how they play the safety position, I'm leaning towards Jamal Adams. But I do believe Jamal Adams is lost in coverage, and I think Brisker can have more of an impact on coverage than Jamal Adams has. So I will say Jamal Adams. If I'm going to compare him to anybody that I've watched and seen before, I think I'm going to say Jamal Adams. Lolo says Team Bears, shout out. Of course, it's Team Bears around here. You already know that. Chi-Town Hustle. We was in the liquor a lot last year, which the Bears were, and it kind of defeated a lot of their season. He likes the comparison. So, if anything, Brisker is more like a Jamal Adams type, but I just think Brisker is going to be better in coverage than Jamal Adams can be and has been throughout his career. And the Bears defensively, I think you're not going to get – I don't think you're going to get a lot of high sack numbers. I just don't see this being a high sack football team. I just don't. Even though Robert Quinn put up 18 and a half last season, I don't see them being necessarily high pressure. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I just don't see that this defensive front is going to – I think they're going to be more built as stout up front versus they are going to be I want to say like a get after the quarterback type of team. I think they're going to element more of the blitzes. Roquan Smith is really, really good in the blitz. So I can see Roquan having more of a blitz role, even though he's good in coverage as well. And I think you're going to see a different element of Roquan in this Bears defense, a new 4-3 defense. He's playing the middle in the 3-4. I think he's playing more the shadow middle, like the strong Sam Mike backer. But it's been rumored that he's probably going to be more of the strong side backer, which I think he's better in the middle, if you want to be honest. I think he's better in the middle, especially calling the shots. He's very instinctive. He has very good closing speed. So I would like to see Roquan still play the middle and use their linebacker blitzes when you need to. I don't think you're going to see him blitz often. You're going to see Roquan blitz more than he has in the past, but I just don't see him blitzing a lot. I think you're going to see him play more of that Darius Leonard type of role. Since Eberflus is coming from the Colts, he's coming from that Darius Leonard type of linebacker, and I think both linebackers are very comparable, even though I think Roquan Smith has a little bit more closing speed than Darius Leonard does, and I think Darius Leonard is a little bit more active and a little bit better in pass coverage, but I still do believe that this Bears team defensively, I think they're going to be solid. You're going to see them be a lot better against the run, which they struggled with last season. They were one of the bottom football teams against the run. And integrating this new 4-3 defense, I think it's going to help a lot. Shout out to my guy, Jay in the Bay. I did a live stream with him before the 49ers game last year. He's a huge 49ers fan. What's up to you? Shout out to you, bro. I see you doing your thing. And my guy says, have the Bears done an adequate job of replacing Khalil Mack? Here's the thing about that. You're not going to replace Khalil Mack. If you want to be honest, you're not going to replace him. There's no replacement for an elite level pass rush talent, an elite level talent like Khalil Mack. You're not going to replace him. It's no replacing an elite level talent like that. Now, have they done an adequate job of adding pieces to it? I believe they have. Khalil Mack, I'm not going to say he might be a little bit past his best years. He still has good football remaining. But with the Bears transitioning from a 3-4 to a 4-3 defense, especially at this point of his career, even though the Chargers run a similar 4-3 type of defense, and I think the Chargers have a little bit more deeper rotation for him versus he's asked to do a ton more with the Bears, and the Bears having to get their contract off of the books. So at this point, have they done an adequate job? They've done the best that they can, because you're not going to replace a guy like Khalil Mack. That's just facts. He's an excellent player when he's healthy. He gets after the quarterback. He creates turnovers. So he's an excellent player when healthy. The last year or so, year and a half, it's just been health for Khalil Mack. And then you pack the health in the contract, and that's the real reason they let him go. Chi-Town Hustler says, I agree. Roquan needs to stay needs to stay in the middle. That's where he's best at, I believe. I really agree with him on that. And Glorious Bot, shout out to you, Kankakee up in here. Shout out to you, Kankakee. 4-3-D is where it's at. Call me old school. Before alignment, just put so much more pressure at all times. It does. It really does. A 3-4 works. We've seen it work. We've seen it work here in Chicago. We've seen a 3-4 work. So it definitely works. It's just the fact of who's calling the scheme, who's calling the plays, and who you have running your scheme. So Jay in the Bay, shout out to you, says, which wide receiver will replace Allen Robinson's production? Now, last year, Allen Robinson wasn't really productive, but I can blame that more on the Matt Nagy scheme and the system and the whole quarterback fluctuation and the bad offensive line than I would Allen Robinson himself, even though Allen Robinson did only have one touchdown last year, which is kind of shocking. But the Bears' passing offense was kind of trash to begin with. But I don't think you're going to see a replacement, sort of say, because Allen Robinson, when he was at his best, was a Pro Bowl level receiver, which he got snubbed, and I think 19 and 20 for making a Pro Bowl. But I don't think you're going to see that this year. I think you're going to see more of a replacement, or that production be heightened. Maybe with Mooney. I can say maybe with Darnell Mooney, because Darnell Mooney, he has excellent speed. His route running is really improved from year one to year two. So I'm going to say, if anybody, I'm going to say Darnell Mooney could probably replace it, especially since we didn't get a lot out of Robinson last year. So I can say Darnell Mooney. Now, I would like us to see us sign Landry. If you're talking about Jarvis Landry, that could be a good fit. I just don't think Landry is going to come to Chicago. That could be a good fit. That you got St. Brown, who's 6'4", 6'5". You have Brian Pringle, who has speed. So if I had to pick, it could be a good fit. We still need to see more of what GETSY is actually going to do and how he's actually going to call and run this offense. But if anything, I do believe a Jarvis Landry signing could go well. I think it could be well in Chicago. It's just the fact of I don't think Jarvis Landry has the Bears on his radar. So, and I don't think the Bears are actually going to go in that direction because we've seen in this free agency that the Bears are not really going after the top name free agents. They really went after the top tier 2, maybe tier 3 free agents, which is guys that's not really bring names, but they add something to the table. This isn't me. Shout out to you. Says, I'm happy about the 4-3 switch, which I believe that's something that was almost inevitable. Seaman has the 3-4 scheme with the Bears personnel really started to not fit anymore with the pieces that Brian Pace had brought in. They really just didn't fit the 3-4 scheme, and the 3-4 scheme was just – it was time for a change. It's time for a change. And Glorious Boss says, as for replacing Khalil Mack, the Bears pushed Brian Urlacher out to transition to 3-4. Years later, we're pushing Mack out to convert back to the 4-3. Roquan has the talent, speed, and knowledge to be the middle linebacker. I agree with you 1,000% on that one. I agree with you 1,000% on that one. He has the talent. He definitely has the closing speed. We've seen his instincts kick in a ton. And he has knowledge of this Bears, this defense. And of course, he's learning a new defense. He has the film study and he has the moxie and he has all of it. I think Roquan is underrated. He's been a Pro Bowl snub, in my opinion, the last 2 years. He's been a big Pro Bowl snub. Let's just be honest. Even though the Pro Bowl doesn't mean as much as it used to, I believe, he's been an All-Pro and he's been a Pro Bowl snub. He's been a consistently productive middle linebacker. And I think they underlook him because the Bears just wasn't winning games. They just weren't winning games. Even though they've been on national TV a ton, and then when the Bears have been on national TV the last couple of years, they've stunk up the joint. But Roquan is a very, very underrated linebacker in this league. He is a very, very underrated linebacker. And I do believe in this 4-3 defense that Matt Eberflus is bringing in, because when you look at the Colts defense, he took over that Colts defense in 2018, and every single season you saw improvement in their defense. We're starting with guys like Darius Leonard, Kenny Moore. They brought in DeForest Buckner to help with the pressure up front. They brought in Xavier Rose to help with the corner. So this 4-3 defense can work. The Bears, I believe, have the personnel to run a 4-3 better than a 3-4. With you bringing in a box safety, a strong safety type like Brisker, who could be a day one starter. Kyler Gordon, who is really excellent in coverage, is going to be the opposite corner along Jalen Johnson, which helps bring pressure up front with Gibson and with Robert Quinn. Now it's just interesting to see where the other linebacker is going to tear out. You got Nicholas Morrow, who they did sign in free agency to help better over that linebacker spot. So I think the Bears, the defense is going to be absolutely solid. The defense is going to be absolutely solid. Shanta Hustle said Roquan and Fields are our leaders. I could agree with you there. And I could believe Robert Quinn is going to be in the leadership role as well. And another thing I'm going to leave this comment up because it leads me to another point. It leads me to another point with the transitioning away from Matt Nagy. Do y'all remember that we had the game-by-game captains? The game-by-game captains, I believe, was the absolute worst idea ever. The worst. Having game-to-game captains. And I can specifically remember that the Seattle Seahawks game, they just signed Bruce Irvin in free agency to help out with the pressure with the injuries. And you name this man a captain when he just got to the team just because he was a former Seahawk. It's the same thing with Jermaine Ifedi was named the captain for the game just because he was an old member of the Seattle Seahawks. And I think what Matt Eberflus is going to be bringing to this Bears locker room is more stable leadership. Not so many voices in the locker room. Accountability. And that is one thing that Matt Nagy also, it wasn't there. The accountability to take responsibility for bad play, good play. Because you watch some of Matt Nagy's press conferences, shout out to Hustler says that was ridiculous. So you remember some of Matt Nagy's press conferences, and you got to think. He always asked himself the whys of the team. First of all, the one why is if you stood in the mirror and looked at yourself. That was the biggest reason why. But with the whole, and it goes to the whole play calling situation. The play calling, his ego did not let him give Laser credit for games where Laser called plays. Everything, he said, everything runs through me. You are the head coach. Sometimes you have to give away some of that power and some of that responsibility to your other coaching staff so you can better coach this team, and this team is better prepared. And I believe that is a product of Eberflus. I think we're going to get over the product from Matt Nagy. You're going to get a guy who's going to take responsibility. I believe you're going to get a guy who's going to be a firm, steady leader in the locker room, steady voice. So at this point, I believe that the transition away from Nagy is going to be a way better football team. Now, the record might not show it. And this is the last thing I want to get off before I close the stream, as we're 43 minutes in. And with Nagy, shout out to Hustler says, with Nagy, everyone was a winner and a captain besides Trubisky. He blamed him for his own incompetence. I can agree with you 1,000% on that. Trubisky gets so much blame. And I actually have a video about that, the whole Matt Nagy, Mitchell Trubisky situation and why Trubisky failed. I actually have a video about why Nagy failed, but at this point, a lot of the blame for the Bears' struggles were not Nagy. And I pointed it out, and a lot of people called me out for it. A lot of people said it was Trubisky. A lot of people said Trubisky was just awful and terrible. But if you watched how Justin Fields looked with Matt Nagy, I was right. A lot of people were right. Matt Nagy was just incompetent as a head coach. 2018 was more of a fluke. 2018 was a huge fluke. Way too much of a huge fluke. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is my way too early predictions. Now, we haven't seen anything yet. We haven't been in the training camps yet. We haven't been in a lot of these things yet. We haven't even seen what this Bears offense and what this Bears defense is going to look like. We haven't seen how everything is going to mesh together. So, with these way too early predictions, this is just me looking at everything on paper. Now, the schedules will be released later on. Now, I want to say Thursday, I think the schedules will be released. And I'll do an episode of this Chicago Bears Weekly breaking down the schedule. But at this point right now, looking at how this Bears roster looks on paper, what am I expecting from this Bears roster? Number one, I'm expecting improvement on offense mainly. I'm expecting improvement on offense. I'm not going to say this. I expected them to be at least better than 15 or better than 20th offensively, because we were almost dead last year for most of the season. I expect the Bears offense to be above 20th. I expect them to be right at that midpoint, right at where you say 14th, 15th. I expect the Bears offense to be ranked in that area, especially with Justin Fields developing in his new offense and the new GETSY's new offense. I don't expect them to come out and score a ton of points. It's not anything I'm expecting from this Bears offense. Even if things start to get rolling and clicking, which they could happen, I don't expect this Bears offense to be anything higher than probably 15th or 14th in the league ranked. Defensively, I can see them being top 15 defense. With Eberflus' scheme and how he transitioned things with the Indianapolis Colts, I have no doubt that he can bring that same transition and physicality and leadership here to this Bears defense with the added pieces of guys like Brisker and guys like Gordon, with Travis Gibson getting more playing time, and he was productive in his playing time last year with the Khalil Mack injury. Roquan Smith still being, I believe, one of the top 3 or 4 linebackers that we have in a football game today. So I think this Bears defense is going to be above 15th. And special teams wise, you're going to have my Ebner that they got in the draft. You're going to have Pringle probably play some of that role with Tariq Cohen being gone permanently. You had Cordell Patterson in years past play some of that role. You had Jakeem Grant last year, which I was kind of disappointed that they let walk out the door, especially the impact that he had. But you bring in a guy like Pringle, who has some speed to him as well. You bring in Velus Jones in the draft, who also is another weapon on this Bears offense and special teams. So my way too early predictions for this Bears roster, this Bears team, without seeing the schedule yet, I am going to go that this is going to be a 7-win football team. I don't believe you're going to get any of those games against Green Bay. You're probably going to split between Minnesota. You're probably going to beat Detroit twice, depending on where that football team stands. And let me double check. Let me look at the schedule. It'll be 100%. Opponents. I know in this NFC North, this Bears team, okay, so you're going to have, okay, so they have, the home games are going to be the Lions. I think they get that one. The Packers, you're going to lose that one. I think they're going to beat the Vikings at home. The Eagles, I think, are a better football team than the Bears. So I think the Bears are probably going to drop that one. They could possibly beat Washington. You're going to drop it to Buffalo at home. I think you're going to drop it to the very improved Miami Dolphins team. I think they're going to beat the Lovie Smith coached Texans. And it's a toss-up between the 49ers. And that depends on their entire quarterback situation. So at that point, I see the Bears getting the Lions. They're probably going to get the Vikings at home. They're going to get Washington at home. And they're going to get the Texans at home. So I think there's 4 wins right there. 5 wins comes to Detroit on the road. You're going to lose to Green Bay on the road. You're going to lose to the Vikings on the road. I think you can lose to Cowboys on the road. You can beat the Giants on the road. You're going to lose to the Patriots. The Jets are improved, but I think you can still get that game. And the Falcons, I don't know. I don't know what the Falcons team is going to be looking like. So you could possibly say about 7 wins for this Bears team. I don't see, if this is more than a 7-win football team, I'm going to be shocked. I'm just going to be 100% honest. If the Bears win more than 7 games, I'm going to be shocked and pleasantly surprised. I am going to be pleasantly surprised if this Bears team wins more than 7 games. Chi-Town Hustler says he's going with 6 or 7 wins. We can beat Keys, Houston, Atlanta. The Jets, he means. Of course, I think you could beat the Jets. You could beat Houston. You could beat Atlanta. You're probably going to split with Minnesota, if not lose both of those games. I just don't. We don't know what this Bears team is going to look like. So based on paper, I think you're going to split. You're going to split. You are going to split the Minnesota, and you're going to beat Detroit twice. But that could also be a split as well. Detroit is a very improved football team. Detroit improved. He says, Fields is so special, I can see us upsetting a good team. Now, that that triggers something because the Bears do have an history. Well, maybe not last season. Well, maybe the Raiders game last season where the Bears beat teams that they didn't have any business beating or they maybe shouldn't have beat. They do have a history of getting one or two of those games. Maybe I'll say one. You can get one game like that from Bears where they beat a team that you really don't think they're going to beat. And if I had to pick any opponent that could be that the Bears, you probably would say they might not beat them, and they could. I would say Philly. If any game is like that, I will probably say the Eagles game. Eagles brought a lot on their offense. So if I'm going to say the Bears could beat one team that they had no business beating, I'm not going to say no business, but because it's any given Sunday, anything can happen. So if the Bears have one opponent where you would say they probably are going to lose that game, but somehow they sneak up and win it, it probably could be Philly. I would have to say Philly. Maybe San Francisco could be too, depending on when they play them and what their quarterback situation is going to look like. Still too early to tell, especially how the schedule is going to look, which will come out Thursday. So, Showtown Hustler says, I like what the Lions are doing. They are building a good squad. They actually seem like they hired the right guys to run their organization, which is why I say I would not be shocked if the Bears actually drop a game to the Lions, even though Jared Goff is their quarterback and, well, he's a liability. But, yeah, the Lions are doing a lot to improve this football team. I think they're kind of close to where the Bears are right now. Kind of close. I don't think they solved quarterback because Jared Goff, I don't believe in him. I haven't believed in him the last 2 years. So if I had to believe in anything, I think the Lions could sneak up and get a game. Maybe. But, yeah. This is going to be an intriguing season for the Bears this year. Now, of course, the schedule is going to tell what my real predictions are. I think how the schedule lays out and how the schedule plays out is going to tell a lot about how this season is going to go, in my opinion, because they've had parts of seasons where they had tougher opponents, and they had parts of the season where they had it a little bit easier but still struggled. But it remains to be seen. But my way too early predictions for this Bears team in 2022, no more than 7 wins. I don't see this Bears team winning any more than 7 games. I do see them being a very competitive team. I do see them improving over last season as far as how the product looks on the field and the eye test. I do see the Bears improving in the eye test on offense and on defense as well. I do see them improving in the eye test. But will that produce to wins in year one of they want to say a retool, but I believe it's a rebuild. If you're going to say anything more than 7 wins, I would just call you crazy. The Bears winning any more than 7 games is going to be crazy. If that happens, I'm all for it, of course. But as we're getting to our end, and I'm at the point now where I am going to close the stream very soon. So I do want to know you guys' predictions, way too early predictions, in the comment section before I close. And it's been a good one. It has been a good one. Get to you guys a little bit of comments. Hey, it's all good. But it's time to close out. About an hour in. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will be dropping Weddle as daily like I have. And I've got a couple of videos cooking up as well. I've kind of been slacking a little bit when it comes to a lot of different videos. I'll just be honest with you guys. My time has been consumed with a couple of different projects or a couple of different things in life. So I haven't really been able to make the content that I really want to make and do the things that I actually really want to do. But a lot of stuff is going to come back. I might end up bringing the Madden series back. I'm not sure about that yet. But I do have a couple of things working out. The Weddle is still going to be every day. It's still going to continue. That is not going to change. But I'm going to incorporate more videos as the season comes, not just with the Bears, but with other things as well, other storylines that I find very interesting heading into this 2022 season, which I think is going to be a very, 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 very exciting season. When all teams and all fronts, even with the Bears, it's going to be exciting to see where this team is going to be. It's going to be exciting to see how things are going to play out. I don't think you're going to have it. Well, I'm not going to get too much into it because I could talk about that all day. But as I close the stream, I want to thank you guys for joining in. Make sure you guys slap that like button. Make sure you guys, if you're now watching this now and you're not, make sure you have subscribed. More things coming from this APW Sports channel. Of course, the weddles are going to continue, and I'm going to incorporate more different things down the line, different types of videos, season outlooks, and all that. But this is going to conclude this week's episode of Chicago Bears Weekly. Now, next week's episode will be breaking down the schedule. I will tell you guys that now. The next week's episode of Chicago Bears Weekly will be me breaking down the entire schedule because it comes out this week. I want to say Thursday or Friday, if I'm not mistaken. But I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been fun. I'm going to start streaming a lot more on this channel, and I will peep you guys in next week's episode. Now, next week's episode, I will tell you now, will not be a live stream. It will not be a live stream. Or if that changes, I will let you guys know. But as it looks at right now, next week's Chicago Bears Weekly will not be a live stream. If things change, I will let you guys know in the community section and on my Twitter page as well, which you guys should go follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, all that. Still at APW Sports. I am signing out. Make sure you guys have a great and safe day, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.